Welcome, everybody. This is Edgardo Balentine.
And this is Scott DiGregorio. And welcome to the Real Estate of Tomorrow podcast, where we're going to discuss the rapidly changing landscape of the real estate industry.
And the steps that you need to take today in order to survive tomorrow.
Look, I'm going to give you the perspective of a 25-year veteran, somebody who has been there and done that.
With Jesus line for all part, okay?
Screw you, man.
Look, I'm going to give you a fresh perspective from somebody that's applying those steps today.
So that basically means you're young and you don't know shit.
All right. Let's get this started. Welcome to the Real Estate of Tomorrow podcast, and this is a very special episode, Scott.
Bro, why is this so special?
Because we have, for the first time ever, we have a guest in the podcast, and his name is René Rodriguez. Who's René Rodriguez, bro?
Listen to me. I love when we start off with our first guest and we're hitting this shit out of the park. This is one of the best and most sought-after speakers in America. His latest book, Amplify Your Influence, is absolutely off the charts.
Anything you want to know about influencing people, and let's be honest, when you sell anything, you're influencing people. René Rodriguez is the expert on. And like Scott just mentioned, we have the book here in hand, and we have a special surprise for our listeners.
Yeah, look, at the end of the podcast, stay tuned. René was generous enough to give us a handful of his books, and we'll be giving them away. And at the end of the episode, we'll tell you how you can get your free copy. The book is absolutely amazing and will take your business to the next level.
All right, everybody. So, Scott, we have René Rodriguez today. How you doing, René?
Super exciting, man.
I'm good. Good to see you guys.
Good to see you.
Very excited to have you, man. And look, I mean, thank you so much for taking the time. I think the best way to start is for the 5 people out there that don't know who you are. Why don't you give us a little bit of your origin story, let's say. Who's René Rodriguez?
I think I wish it was less than 5 people, but no, it's definitely a lot more than 5 people. That's for sure. So I've been in the world of speaking, consulting, training, change management, now speaker, influence training for 28 years now. I did the math since 1994. And my background is behavioral neuroscience. And so I look at everything from the backdrop or the lens of science and applied science. A brain is the one thing that we all have in common. And so for me, I look at things in, how do we create a backdrop of science so we can have some truth behind it that lives beyond just an emotional short-term experience to something that can be long-lasting. And so we apply science to the areas of leadership, change, influence, sales, and some of the toughest problems in the workplace is what we try to solve.
That's awesome, René. Well, listen, the name of the podcast, Real Estate of Tomorrow, and I know you have your fingers in lots of industry, but real estate and mortgages being on that list. And I mean, just big picture, what do you think of the real estate, the shift that's happening in the real estate industry with real estate agents? Where are we today? Where do you think we're going to be tomorrow? There's commission pressures, there's new technology coming to the market, et cetera.
Well, I wouldn't say that this is my expertise at all, but I can tell you that I think that this is part of a cycle. And I know a lot of people that are the experts that are telling you this is something they predicted, we saw it coming, and this is a business cycle. And a lot of people are saying this is a massive shift. And some people are saying that this is going back to normal and that we were in la la land before. We were looking at interest rates that were ungodly low and things that just weren't sustainable beyond the time that we had them. And so we're going back to something that seems a little bit more sustainable, and it's a change. And so this is going to be won by those that understand how to learn and adapt to change, ones that can manage the stress and still stay focused on what's happening and still try to find ways to add value, which, by the way, is no different than any other business and the requirements of staying in business and staying competitive. You have to assess the landscape. You have to assess the market. You have to assess the change. And then can you change along with it? That's going to determine it. I've had to shift. We went from being all in person to being all virtual to now being hybrid to now looking at new products as the market shifts. That's just part of innovation. It's part of continually growing. And this industry has been spoiled for a long time not having to shift. And so it can be quite the shock when people have to. So I think, I won't speak to the future of it because I think you guys can speak a lot better to that than I can. I can speak to the general understanding of a business cycle and managing the change and the stress within it. If you can help be somebody that shows opportunity during times like this, you will thrive. If you can find ways to add value, you will always win. That doesn't matter the market. Value is the one thing that supersedes all of it and that will penetrate all of it. But if you're going to play like everyone else and get scared and not do anything, I'll tell you what's going to happen. nothing for you, and everyone's going to pass you.
Yeah, I love that answer because it's true. I mean, these new environments allow us to change, and to what you're saying, there's something that I was very interested in asking you, and is, you're talking about adding value. You're talking about the art of neuroscience and influence, right? When we try to add value, one of the things that we've been talking about in the podcast and that we've been doing with our clients is, allowing ourselves to have very emotional conversations, very deep conversations that go, in our role as lenders, that go beyond just the financing. And, when we talk to realtors, that go beyond just the real estate transaction, because let's be honest, it's a very emotional transaction. So one of the things that, and I want you to speak on this, that really changed my mindset and that really changed the mindset of my team when it came to how to properly do what we call a dreams and goals call, is to do a proper framing of it. Explain of why we're asking the questions that we're asking. And that was, René, that has been something that was like life-changing for our business. So I would love for you to expand a little bit on what framing is and the power that does when it comes to influencing and all of that.
And the tie down as well, René. Definitely, definitely to tie down as well. So I know this is a big focal point of one of your focal points. So yeah, please share with the audience what it is and how deeply important it is during times of change.
Absolutely. So let's go back to kind of what you're saying during times of change. And so your brain and all of us are going to perceive that in very different ways. And how we perceive that determines our reality. And so some people are going to perceive times of change as long overdue and awesome because it allows us to do X, Y, and Z and to be better at certain things. Some people are going to perceive during times of change as something that's going to be detrimental to the business. Some people are going to perceive times of change of saying, I don't know if I can do this business anymore. The way you decide to interpret that depends on what frame of reference you draw upon to kind of surround it. When we're thinking about the frame, it's the human process that we all go through in the brain to understand what we call a simplified model of reality. We have to understand things. You know things like, if I say used car salesman, most people will say things like sleazy and dishonest and pushy. Well, all I said was used car salesman, and everybody accessed a frame of reference to bring to the present moment to help sort of interpret this reality in front of me of this individual. And then they're going to make decisions whether I can trust them or not. And so if I were to say, don't worry, you can trust me, I'm a used car salesman, then we know that, most people will giggle at that. And I can see you smiling because it's incongruent with the frame. And so when it comes to influence is about how do we influence and control or manage the frame by which we interpret scenarios. Sometimes we have to manage the frame of value and price. And some people are going to say, well, what's your rate and what's your commission and what's the price of this? Well, if it's high, determined as high, that means the frame of reference was something lower. Or if it's a lot of emphasis is put on the rate or the commission, that means that they're operating from a frame of reference that rate and commission are most important. And for you to change that, you've got to change the frame. You've got to offer a better, more enticing frame, and one that makes more sense to them, for them to judge you and for them to understand that. And so, like somebody said, the interest rate's too high, and so that's what a lot of people are facing. And so somebody said, René, how do you handle that? And so I said, let me ask you, and I'll ask you guys. You guys both own homes, I'm assuming.
Sure.
So give me an example, Scott. Do you remember a time that you were at home with your family and everybody was there and everything was great, and it's just one of those really super special moments? Do you remember one of those?
Sure.
Tell me about it.
The thing that comes to my mind first is Christmas Eve dinners. I have big crowds of people over my house for Christmas. I cook for everybody. We do the whole Feast of the Seven Fishes, and 20, 30, 40, 50 of the most loved people in my life getting together and laughing and joking and just celebrating life. Just the best day of the year for me every year. I
love that. So let's pretend that I want to buy that memory from you. I'd like to have that memory because I don't have one like that. So I'd like to buy it from you. Can I buy it for $500?
No.
No? Could I'll offer you $1,000?
No.
No? 5,000?
No.
10?
No.
50?
No.
Yeah, you have to think almost, could I buy it for 100,000? That means it never happens.
Right.
100,000?
It never happens? Oh, no.
Yeah. And so we go, okay, so you're telling me that memory is invaluable to you. It's priceless. Is that true?
100%.
See, that's what happens when you own your own home, is you have moments like that. I'm going to guess that you have more than one moment like that.
I do.
And so you're telling me that these moments of what we're looking at purchasing are giving you priceless moments, and yet we're worried about an interest rate that's maybe a percentage higher. That's going to represent maybe $100 more expensive payment. And so here's the reality. The interest rates from before are gone forever. I wish I could have bought Tesla and Apple when it was at a penny, or Bitcoin when it was in the pennies, but I didn't. And me sitting around wishing I would have and not acting misses out on the massive value that's going to be generated, and it has been generated since. That's the same thing that happens in real estate. The interest rates of 2% and 3% are gone. Where we are is where we are right now. And the home values are always going to go up. But more importantly, those priceless memories, the longer you wait, the longer you can't have those. You told me about that kitchen that you wanted when you get in there. It's amazing. You can serve everybody. You see everything. And that backyard, watching your kids play around. And finally, a garage that fits all your cars. So you're not sitting there trying to start the car in the winter. Let's keep our eye on the ball. Let's get you in there, and you're going to, and you've probably heard this before, we're going to fall in love with this house. And then we're just going to date this rate. We're going to go on a few dates for a little while. And then when we're done with it, we'll kick it to the curb. We'll get a better rate when something better comes along. And trust me, I get paid to do that. And so when that happens, I'll let you know, I promise. So let's keep our eye on the ball and let's get you in this home. So if you see how that works,
yeah,
you immediately know we're not thinking, it's not about the rate, but you have to learn how to remind people of what's most valuable.
Yeah, that's so good. That's so good. I know Edgardo and I, the first time we met you was back in 2018. You told a story about your favorite color. And I think the thing that's important for people for the audience to know is how memorable these stories are. I still vividly remember that story and why green is your favorite color, René. Maybe you could speak as to why those stories stick into people's brains so permanently when all the other gibberish just kind of falls by the wayside.
Well, it's the way that our brains work. Our brain's memory works based on things that we feel. This comes from Dr. John Rady, who's the head neurologist at Harvard. He said, we don't remember what we calculate to be important. We remember what we feel to be important, which is why we won't remember the interest rate that we got when we purchased a car or a home, but we remember the experience. We'll remember where we were when 9/11 happened. And some people old enough might remember where they were when Kennedy was shot, when the Space Shuttle Challenger blew up. I remember exactly where I was. Those things hit our values, they hit our memories in an emotional way and ingrain themselves and brand themselves like a brand, right? Like a hot brand into our minds, and they could become light bulb moments that they don't go away. And so when we think about story and events like that, the story is what we remember, not what we calculate to be important, like Pythagorean's theorem or, an interest rate. We just don't remember that stuff. Just not how it works.
Interesting.
Let me ask you something, René. What's your favorite color?
Well, I was born in Miami and moved to Minnesota when I was about 7 years old, and lived Miami, Minnesota till I was about 15, half-time back in each city or each state. So during that time, I never really felt at home, except if I was on a beach. If I was on a beach and I saw palm trees, I knew it was close to my friends, my food, my music, my culture, all the things that made me happiest. And palm trees are green, so my favorite color is green. So that's the example. And most people, you ask them their favorite color, and they're just going to say blue, red, green, whatever the color is, black, pink, purple.
I love it because what happened to me when we read that and when we heard that in a couple of years ago, and I know that before this interview we met, and we both remember that green was your favorite color. It's something so insignificant, it's something so mundane. Like, why would I remember or care about anybody's favorite color other than my daughters and my wife?
Right.
But yet, that's something that was ingrained in my mind. And how many little opportunities we have, when we're communicating with people to really ingrain thoughts and ideas and really a piece of our personality and of who we are. And, if you were able to do that in front of thousands of people, now let's remember, you weren't just talking to us. This wasn't a question that was a spontaneous question that we asked you. This was a presentation that you gave. That made me think of how many missed opportunities I've had when I have what seems to be regular conversations on really taught on these type of things. And again, thinking about these things and thinking in the sense of, real estate and selling and influencing, how can somebody, let's say a realtor giving a listing presentation or a buyer's presentation or something that's a little bit more salesy, for lack of a better word, come across and like, what can somebody that's presenting do to touch people and to really like ingrain this personality and who they are into people on a sales presentation without seeming pushy and seeming disingenuous, you know?
What people have to understand is our brain functions in a sequence, and that sequence is really going to determine how we process and retain information. And the thing that we need is we need connection first before we retain, or before we will even allow you in. Because especially in today's world, it's such a noisy world, and there's so many people competing for our attention that we just don't. If you're not adding value immediately, we're not paying attention. You have 3 seconds on social media to capture attention, and you have 7 seconds to make a first impression in person. So we're immediately boxing and sort of pushing people into boxes. And so the easiest thing for people to do is understand there's a certain sequence of how we process things. And of course, we do a intense 3-day training on this. The book was written all about this process, and we got the podcast and everything, but if I were to give you a real simple way to think about it, is connect first, information second, right? So in the best way to connect or hold on to a frame is through your own personal story. So somebody says, what do you do? What makes you unique? And you go back to, I remember as a kid, growing up, and my father or my mother was this way, and I remember a story from there. And ever since then, I was always intrigued with, treating people with respect. So then all of a sudden you tell this story that stimulates and sort of brings to life these values. And then those values can be then translated to your current business proposition. So for example, we had one person, we asked him this question, what do you do? And he said, I'm a mortgage banker. I said, great. What makes you unique? And he looks at me and he goes, I like to educate people. I was, cool. We had 1,000 people in the room. I said, great, let's test it. How many other people here like to educate people? And 1,000 hands went up. And I said, cool. I said, look, you didn't differentiate, but you did connect. You did relate. And I said, so why? Of all the things you could have chosen, why did you choose education? And he sat there and he hadn't thought about it before. And all of a sudden this light bulb goes off. He goes, I never thought about this before. I'm like, what happened? He goes, well, I'm Jewish and education's everything to my family, especially my dad. And I remember I was going to drop out of school. And when I told my dad this, he lost his mind and pulled me out of the school I was in and put me in another school that was, 30 minutes away to get me away from my friends. And man, I hated my dad at the time, but I guess he saved my life. I'm like, what do you mean? Well, the other 2 friends that we were going to drop out, one's in jail, the other one's on drugs. And I was on my way to college because I had knowledge and information, and that education helped me make better choices. And I've watched all my, now all of a sudden you see the story start coming out. So he tells that story first. What do you do? He says, well, I'm Jewish and, education is very important to me and my family, and tells that story. And then ends it with, here's your tie down, ends it with, so, I knew that I needed to get into an industry that would allow me to educate people and really take the time to work with them through difficult process. And so the mortgage process and getting a loan for a home can be highly stressful. And most people are treated like numbers and transactions, but I knew that everybody had a story and I wanted to give them the education so they can make better decisions. And so I get a chance to do and give people the same gift that my father gave me every single day. And that gift is education. So now it's like such a different story, and it doesn't even give anybody else a chance because it's that powerful.
That's such a powerful thing for people to adopt in their day-to-day lives. And it brings forth another question in my mind, René. And we're dealing with challenges right now with the media, specifically nowadays, is really speaking to a lot of social media, speaking to this looming real estate disastrous crash that, in my opinion, the data just doesn't come close to supporting. We've talked about that on plenty of other episodes. But one of the challenges that I believe the members of our audience are facing is that somebody says, I'm going to hold off and wait for prices to drop. The agent feels that it's not going to drop. What is your advice on how to properly communicate that effectively where, like you said earlier, we live in such a noisy world. I feel like everybody's trying to sell me everything all the time. It's frankly exhausting. And the second I feel a sales pitch, my walls go up and I'm done. So how do we communicate and educate people out of that, into the reality of what the data is showing without them, forcing them to, or causing them to put up their walls right away?
For me to trust data, I have to trust the person delivering it. That's the end of the day. So the data may be right, but I may not trust you. And since you're the one delivering the data, I don't trust the data. And so you have to work on your credibility. And that comes down to your ability to understand the data at its core. And do you have a personal brand that says that this is what I know? If on social media, all you do is post memes and you're a jokester and all of a sudden you start coming out with financial data, I don't know, your brand is set. You're the jokester. I get it. Where's my next meme? Don't give me advice. Now, you might be super smart, but you forget everything you post on social media is contributing to your brand and your brand image. If you want to be that person that people trust during difficult times, then you better start giving good data throughout that time, but always answering that question of what it means to them. So for, this is what makes like keeping current matters KCM blog so powerful because they're giving that information. Why Barry Habib has been so successful because he can answer those questions. Why Mortgage Coach provides so much value, and Dan Rawich and those people that really provide the scripting around that stuff, and they can give you data and information, and man, it's powerful. But then people, they regurgitate a sentence or two, but they don't show any depth of knowledge. But what they really need to do is saying, hold on a second, here's what the data says, but let me explain what it means to you. And you got to be able to answer that question. And I would use the emotional side too of what I said there about having people access a memory. Like, I hope people go back and say, let's listen to that script that I gave. And that is one of the most powerful ways that you can help people really keep their eye on the ball and what's most important.
Great stuff.
Yeah, that's powerful. You mentioned earlier, and this is something that happened to a lot of people. Honestly, I'm very curious to hear your take on this. The world completely changed a couple of years ago, right? Everybody had to very quickly adapt to using things like what we're using right now, right? Using Zoom, using StreamYard, using all these different technologies and being able to use them at a higher level, right? They didn't become something that was nice to have and whatever, trendy. It became necessary. And, there was a different type of adoption of this technology. Some people did it at a very high level. Some people didn't, right? I was very concerned about Scott just because he's old and antiquated. But, I see that you, for example, you've been doing this for a long, long time. And not only you adopted it, but, a lot of the reason I have the equipment I have is your fault, right? The lights and the mic and all these things, because it became not just, let's use the technologies, but it also became, how can I connect through the technology? How can I do the same thing that I do in person, or even better, through these technologies? Why don't you tell us a little bit about what your experience was with that? I don't know if it was something that came super easy to you, or it was something that it took some learning. And a lot of the realtors, especially here in Southwest Florida, they're not. It's not a bunch of young people that are easy to adopt new things. So what advice would you give to the not so young people that still have trouble adopting this, and then to the young people that adopt it, but like I did, without taking it with the seriousness that it needs to be taken?
Right. Well, I can tell that you were a good student. That's awesome. You remembered all the reasons behind it, and you look great on camera, by the way. Both of you guys look great. And so the reality was, travel was taken away from me. So we're in-person events. And I had to cancel almost 100 events when the NBA canceled in March of 2020. And when I looked at that, I was like, okay, here we go again. This happened in 9/11, and now we're here. Okay, what do I do? So I knew that people still there was fundamentals that never change. Doesn't matter what's happening. People still need value. That doesn't ever change. They needed to understand what was going on. So I needed to find a way to communicate to them. And so I started putting out videos, and I went to my friend Ryan Grams from Call Upgrade. I would follow him. And I said, here, turn my DSLR camera into my webcam. And he looks at me like I'm crazy. He goes, well, you can't. They're not designed for that. I'm like, I know you can't. But if you could, what would you have to do? And he said, oh, man. And he's like, let me play with it. 18 hours later, he calls me. He goes, check it out. And he's on camera. And I'm like, no way. I was like, yep, that's awesome. And then we started realizing that just the camera wasn't enough. We needed lighting. And then we needed a microphone. And then we needed a backdrop because I had this wood paneling back there before in my old house. And that wood paneling was made it look like I was on, from the 80s, and realized that there was this whole process to doing it. And the amount of videos, I'm talking in the hundreds of me going, all right, how's this sound? How's this sound? How about now? How about now? Check 1, 2. How about now? Is this too close? Is it too far? What do we? And we would, constantly testing. We were up at 5 this morning testing more things, to give you an idea. This almost 3 years into it. And so, or 2 years, 2 years into this. And we're still testing stuff. We're still doing new things. We're, just the way we control everything and how quickly we launch videos, and, even being able to just do something as simple as put my Instagram right here so I can point to my Instagram, or I can say, well, hey, I got buy my book and here's the, follow this URL. Those kinds of things were things that we want to just kind of continue to innovate. But you got it right. It was for the purpose of replicating the in-person experience. Because when you can do that, now all of a sudden you build trust faster.
It's interesting. As a follow-up to that, I'd like to expand on that last sentence you made about building trust faster because it is different. Edgardo and I both do public speaking, and we've done plenty of Zoom presentations, and it is different. So if somebody is feeling like, I've had a lot of people in my audience even tell me it's impossible to build connection and rapport with somebody through the technologies. Certainly the three of us disagree with that, but I'd love you to expand on that a little bit. And then after that, I have another follow-up question.
Absolutely. I'd be happy to expand on that one because that's just somebody making an excuse for not knowing how. We sit there and watch 3-hour full-length movies with our families. We binge watch our favorite TV shows, and we fall in love with characters. And when people die in the movies, we cry. We build connections to the characters and the protagonists, and we get angry. We fall in love with players playing basketball and football and games, and we get angry at those. It happens, but there's a formula to it, and none of us were ever taught the formulas. They were just said, well, if I hit play on a camera somewhere, and as long as a microphone works somewhere, I'm good. No, that's not how it works. There's a position to the camera that matters. If you can see the video, you notice that my eye is perfectly parallel as if we were eye to eye. You notice that my lights, you can see my eyes move. You can see the wrinkles in my eyes if it's a real smile, a genuine smile. You can see too many of the craters in my face because, I'm getting old. You can see all of that stuff, almost too much. Zoom actually can blur some of that stuff out, but this StreamYard kind of catches everything. A microphone that sounds good versus a microphone that's in another room that doesn't sound real good. And so the placement of the microphone matters. And so all of these things start to matter because the goal that we're trying to achieve with with video and Zoom and online is to get past what we call disassociation. So if you got a bad camera, bad lighting, bad microphone, it means I can barely hear you and I can barely see you. And so if that happens, it's harder for me to catch what's going on. So it takes too much effort. So I'm going to disassociate from you to pay attention to something more interesting that's in front of me. Maybe it's my phone, maybe it's another conversation, maybe it's email. Who knows what it is? But if I can get you past disassociation and to associate and to connect with me, the best way to do that is to replicate the in-person experience. And the most important part is the microphone, because this is what pierces the screen. This is what makes it sound like you're in the same room. And then if you have great lighting on a mediocre camera, you're going to look great. You're going to look great. And then make sure that your backdrop has your brand. You can see my book. You can see a lighthouse, which we talk about all the time. Some of my favorite books, Color Blue from my personal brand. All those things are on purpose.
That's awesome. Now, one thing that's been a consistent theme here in our time together has been things can't stay the same. And this is something Edgardo and I talk about all the time to our audiences on our podcast, where you can't do things today the way you've done things yesterday. And frankly, you can't do things tomorrow as you're doing things today. So if your son was getting into real estate, hey, Dad, I want to be a real estate agent. Let's go grab a cup of coffee and give me your best advice. What advice would you give to your son or any loved one that was getting into this industry right now that wanted, I think in some ways there's certainly scenarios where youth might have advantages over the veterans because of their adaptation and change and things of that nature. What type of advice would you give to your son if he was getting into the real estate industry today? Well,
so the reality is this could be one of the best times to get involved, because if you can learn the industry now and survive, you'll survive anything. It's only going to get better. And so for me, I think some of the best people I know started in times like this because they didn't know any different. So they weren't spoiled and they weren't entitled. And by the way, we were all spoiled and entitled. I get on a plane and if the Wi-Fi doesn't work, I get so pissed. You used to not have that, but once you give it to me, I have higher expectations, and so I get entitled to Wi-Fi. I can't believe they don't have Wi-Fi. But it's like, dude, you're flying in a big hunk of metal across the United States. Relax and be grateful, but no, I want Wi-Fi. And then they took away first class meals. It's like, oh my God, we all get that way. So if you can survive in something like this, then you're going to be great. The best advice I'd give is to understand that this is a sales game. It is a sales game. You're going to have to learn how to sell, which means you're going to have to learn how to generate leads. You're going to have to be involved with some sort of good marketing program to help you generate those leads. Personal brand matters more than anything, more than ever today, because people need to trust you and they're looking you up online. They're looking up everything you're doing and deciding if they can trust you. And so this is a sales activity game. You're going to have to make up in numbers, which you don't have in skill. So you're going to have to out hustle and outwork everyone. Those types of things are basic fundamentals that never go away. And the harder you work, the quicker you learn. And the quicker you learn, the better you'll be able to work in a more efficient manner.
That's awesome advice. Now, Edgardo and I are big fans of yours. We listen to your podcast. We've loved your book. We're going to an Amplify event. In closing, René, I'd love you to share with everybody how they could connect with you and what they'll get from connecting with you.
Well, I appreciate it. First, thanks guys for having me on. Yeah. My website's the easiest things, meetrene.com, MEET, Rene, RENE.com. Follow me on Instagram. It's CRene Speak, SEE, Rene, RENE, speak.com. And basically all my social channels are CRene Speak. And so follow me there. We have our book. If they want that, they can get that on meetrene.com or Amplify book. Amplify is 2 I's, book.com. But I think probably the easiest thing to do is just go to our website and see everything there. Our podcast is free. Get the book, all of that great stuff. And if you want to come to an event, click on Amplify on the webpage and select some dates.
That's awesome.
Well, we are going to the event. We talked about that. We're going to the event this year. I'm already excited. The Amplify event.
Well, which one?
November.
I want to say Miami or Fort Lauderdale.
Wonderful. Perfect.
And we're very excited. I'm already having my wife count how many times I say, and just so it's not as bad once I'm there, because I've seen some footage and it looks very, very interesting. So
if you master that, I'll just find something else to knock you down from.
So no, we're very excited, man. Thank you so much for spending the time. I think these are skills that everybody, I mean, this is obviously, the podcast is for realtors and people that are, interested in real estate, but this is something that influencing is something that's important for everybody, right? Not just people that are trying to sell. Every time you speak, you're trying to influence one way or another. So, just thank you so much for taking the time. And I encourage everybody to go check it out.
Thanks, guys. I appreciate you having me on here. It's been a pleasure. And it's guys like you that give us the platform to talk and share ideas. And so it's always an honor. And keep doing what you're doing because you're making an impact.
Thanks a lot, René. Take care.
Thanks, guys.
All right. I hope you enjoyed the podcast with René Rodriguez.
Dude, that was absolutely awesome.
Yeah, and make sure you follow René on all the platforms. There's a lot more where that came from. He gives nothing but gems.
Yeah, and look, I know we're going to be giving away a handful of books, but if you're not one of the lucky people to get one of those, go out and buy his book. Follow him on social media and sign up for his Amplify event. Those Amplify events, there's only 12 people in them, and they're supposed to be just life-changing.
All right, Scott, so we're talking about these books. How are we going to give away these books, man?
Look, man, I think it's easy, right? I think we use them as bait to get 5-star reviews, brother.
Only 5-star reviews, okay?
All right, so look, the next 10 people that leave us a 5-star review, after leaving us the review, I want you to send us an email with your contact information to success@realestateoftomorrow.com, and we will drop a book in the mail to you.
And the books are signed too, man.
All right, guys, thank you so much, man, and I'll see you in the next episode.
Well, thank you guys for listening. And now it's your turn to implement everything you learned today.
Look, you have a question, you have a topic for a future episode?
Share with us.
Yeah, tell us what you're doing. What are you doing today so you could be successful tomorrow? Send us an email at success@realestateoftomorrow.com.
And don't forget to leave us a review, an honest review.
Screw an honest review. Leave us a 5-star review. And for every 5-star review we get, we're going to send you a badass Real Estate Mean t-shirt.
Those shirts are hilarious.
See ya.